And so that was Vitalik's whole thing of try it and see what happens. And you have a few hundred people live together for a month or two. Not common at all. We're much more interested in like painting a more optimistic vision of the world that attracts people. Be the community, right? And so we had almost like 95% carryover from the first event to the second event. I genuinely think pop-up cities are a critical layer. It was overcompensated by the benefit of having a bunch of people try a bunch of different stuff so that we could all learn from each other. It gives me life energy.
Amazing. Thank you everyone for being here for the second of our live, ARC firesides. We have Timour from Edge City here. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
And again, I'd love to start, I guess, like actually at the beginning of your personal journey before we get into Edge. So just like, yeah, give us a brief introduction to yourself. Like where did you grow up? Where are you from?
So I was born in a small town in Siberia in Russia, in the Far East, right near the border of China and North Korea. I was very lucky to have a brilliant mother who got one of the first scholarships to come to study in the US after the Soviet Union collapsed. So she went and studied and then got a job in London. So I moved there when I was 7 with her. Grew up very British boy. Had a wonderful time there. But yeah, it's kind of a quintessential immigrant success story. Like we really acclimatized to where we arrived. Eventually, I moved to the States when I was 18 for university, studied math, econ, computer science in New York. Spent most of my 20s there building startups, operating, eventually running a VC fund. And then that's what led me to Zuzalu and the work that I do now.
So where were you at school in the UK?
I went to City of London School for Boys.
Okay.
So wore a suit and tie since age 10, full uniform, traveled an hour to get into the city, went there for school. Very funny, interesting experience, especially given where I had just been a few years ago.
Yeah.
I must be the only person from the town where I was born to go to that.
No, was it a rugby school or a football school?
Football.
It was a football school. That's why we've been in cross paths. I was at a rugby school. The same sort of part of town.
Yeah.
But okay, interesting. Oh my God, I feel like you haven't been back home. Is that right? As in not home, but from where you were born.
So I've never been back to the town where I started my life, but when I moved to London, my grandparents moved to Ukraine. We're part Ukrainian. So I would go back there every summer. So I actually have more of a relationship as an adult with Ukraine as a place rather than Russia. It's obviously kind of an interesting mix of cultures at the present moment.
Sure.
But yeah.
That's an understatement. And is New York home for you though at the minute?
Right now it's between New York and Berlin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was in New York for 10 years. Berlin has now been more my center of gravity because of my girlfriend, who's German. But my family's in New York now, so I kind of straddle Europe and the US.
Fine. And then straight out of university, you went straight into tech and were bought it with release or
No, I had a investment banking phase. Like, so you talk about so there's like a 2-year program you do in IB. I was doing like tech mergers and acquisitions.
Sure.
I lasted 1 year of those 2 years. It just was not for me. It was not the right structure for me to feel like I was flourishing. Also around that time, I had a bunch of side quests, businesses going on. I've been DJing, playing music since I was 18. I was throwing parties and raves in New York while working on Wall Street. So it's kind of a funny juxtaposition. But also in the full span of time, it all makes sense.
Yeah.
Especially what I'm doing now, like gathering people.
No, it sounds like throwing parties is a potentially useful thing as a community builder and all that stuff, right? Yeah. So very cool. But okay, so you managed to get out of the 2-year, kind of like IB tour. And then again, did you immediately have a project you were starting? Why did you leave? What were you getting into? What happened there?
Yeah, so there's a company called Artsy. I should say artsy. It's hard to understand with a British accent, but it's like one of the first tech success stories in New York. And they were just coming up around that time. I joined early on. I was kind of a chief of staff role, kind of right hand to the CEO. And that was my real like education moment in both in tech, in building startups, and also again building community. Um, I was 22 when I started. I became friends with some folks there, started going to Burning Man with them and seeing more like community at scale, you know, at the few hundred people scale of like our camp. Yeah, so that was again that through line of tech, community building, etc.
Very interesting. Okay, and then from artsy was then into VC.
There was a couple more startups. I started something called Nashash in 2017. It's like a game theory platform on Ethereum, super early, where I helped start something called Karma, which was a wellness app platform focused on primarily sexual wellness, actually. And then, yeah, a number of other projects. And then I became eventually a partner at Seed Club, which is a crypto kind of DAO focused VC fund.
Sure.
Yeah.
What was the game theory startup? What was the play there?
Nash Hash. Okay, so I studied game theory at university, and it's kind of a hilarious thing because you end up running these experiments where you pay people $20 to come in and you run iterated versions of like Prisoner's Dilemma or like, I forget, yeah, some of these other, you know, classic games.
Sure.
But it's kind of silly because it's not like you're not actually getting insight on people's decision-making abilities or decision-making like processes. So when Ethereum came around, it was just instantly very interesting to me. I've been using Bitcoin since freshman year of college, so since 2011 for, let's say, online activities. And so I was aware of like crypto, aware of it. But when Ethereum came around, that's when I was like, okay, this is interesting because here are incentive mechanisms that you can play around with. You can actually start to see how people make decisions at scale with real incentives in, you know, like real scenarios. And so the idea was, can we create a platform around that where we lightly incentivize people to play versions of these games and see what we can learn and then use those learnings for guiding like protocol development, right? Because at the time, a lot of the ICOs and protocols that were getting built, we just didn't know what was going to happen once you hit go on the token launch.
Yeah, sure.
So we thought, okay, maybe there's actually space for something where you could gain learnings ahead of time and see how people would react in certain scenarios, etc. It's kind of applying my academic background in that context. The best thing that came out of it in the end was that my co-founder Teo went on to be very early at Uniswap. He ran strategy there, he ran their venture arm, and obviously that absolutely ripped.
Sure. To say the least, yeah.
To say the least, yeah.
No, very, very cool. By any chance, when you were studying, did you read The Evolution of Cooperation by Robert Axelrod?
No, I've read parts of it since, but yeah, really cool. Really cool.
Yeah, it's just one of my favorites. But okay, fine. So then you ended up at C Club and you were doing deals in sort of like the crypto sort of like space. And then at a certain point got bored of backing everyone else's ventures and thought that you would embark on your own or that, yeah.
Yeah, it's like there's a one step missing there, which was, so we were a DAO focused fund and like DAO tooling, DAOs in general, we're very in on that thesis and very early. The fund itself was structured as a DAO. So it had a very cool structure where we had LPs, but the LPs were other leading crypto funds or investors. And they would be involved at the scouting stage and the kind of final deciding stage. And then we would do the middle stage of like the diligence once we had projects come in. It actually worked really well. And ironically, given the thesis, our biggest hit was a company called Stability AI, which was one of the teams that essentially invented Stable Diffusion, which is the baseline of many image models, which probably made this art here. And they went from nothing to unicorn in a few months. And so it was this big kind of, oh shit moment, you know, early in the AI days, like early, like 2021, 2022.
Yeah.
So then what happened was that there was an event that Vitalik Buterin organized or initiated called Zuzalu. And Zuzalu was kind of the proto pop-up village. It expanded the adjacent possible for many of us when we all realized like, oh, wow, this is so cool. Let's do that. So that was a very like formative moment. But before the event started, they were looking for someone to lead the AI track. And given there was kind of like crypto adjacent event, they wanted someone who understood crypto and AI. And it somehow landed on our desk. So we were like, yeah, we'll go to Montenegro. Yeah, fine. So I organized the AI track at Zuzalu.
Yeah.
And that's how this all kind of began.
That's okay. Well, God, how was Montenegro? How was Zuzalu for you? How did that go?
So yeah, I had a really good time in Zuzalu, and it was very personally meaningful. I felt very fulfilled while I was there. And I think it's because there was such a cool variety of experiences. So for example, we invited Grimes, the music, Grammy Award winning artist, to come and for the AI week specifically. And she agreed, she came, and we got to DJ together. And she's someone I'd known of for a long time. And that was just kind of a cool, fun experience. So that was like the creative side. There was obviously the intellectual side, lots of learnings, lots of lectures and ideas. And, we've all now been in these kinds of spaces, so you know how exciting that can feel.
Yep.
There was the just like human connection side, there was the playfulness side. We were doing cold plunges, we were going on hikes and all of that. So basically after my time there, I got back and I was like, damn, that felt really good, personally. And over my time there, I started to kind of grok the potential societal impact of this, of creating these spaces that allow us to momentarily create a container to run interesting experiments, innovate, create new tech, culture, etc. And so it was those two things, like my experience and also the potential of it, kind of longer term, that inspired me to essentially join the Zuzalu team with Vitalik and Janine, who's now my co-founder, but she created Zuzalu with Vitalik and a few other folks. So I helped them organize Zoo Connect, which was our second and kind of last big Zuzalu event. It was in Istanbul exactly 2 years ago, right before Dev Connect. And that was great in itself. We learned a lot. But after that event, we decided to decentralize Zuzalu, make it a bit more of a movement, an idea, encourage other spin-off zoo villages. And then Janine and I started Edge.
It's really interesting again, because like Zuzalu and that Zoo Connect, right, I think were very successful events. Everyone loved them. Everyone wanted more. What was that, the reasoning or the rationale to sort of like split it up, as opposed to have that team that had been successfully executing these events, just do the next one type thing? What happened there?
Ultimately, it came down to the fact that Vitalik didn't want it to just be the same few hundred people that happened to hear about Zuzalu early on, be the community, right? And so we had almost like 95% carryover from the first event to the second event. And it felt like, okay, this is really cool, but how do we actually make a bit more of a movement here and not just keep running this back,
Yep.
And it also, I think there was a bit of like a tyranny of structurelessness thing where it was obviously such an exciting and fun and vibrant thing that people wanted to be a part of. But we were all trying carefully not to step into a leadership position that felt like it would undermine the like decentralized ethos of the whole thing, right? So we didn't want to be like, all right, so we have legitimacy now because we've executed twice really well. We're going to do the third one. It was a lot of like, okay, who's going to step up? Do we want this? Do we want a new leader every time? What does this even want to be? There's, ask 10 people, you get 20 different ideas. And like, it was just a lot going on. And so eventually, even though it was a community thing, ultimately Vitalik had essentially decision-making power.
Sure.
And what we decided to do, instead of continuing in that direction, we would instead do a Gitcoin funding round.
Yep.
People would put forward their proposals for what should happen, and folks would vote, using quadratic voting, and then the pool of capital that mostly Vitalik but other funders put up would get distributed based on that. And at the time, I think in the long run, it's worked out beautifully. At the time, the one thing that the point I tried to make to V and like to other folks was that we had so much collective bargaining power when we were in conversations with the Montenegrin government. We had other potential conversations of that caliber lined up, and it felt almost like, oh man, we're going to lose that, if we dissipate. But I think that was still overshadowed by the benefit, or it was overcompensated by the benefit of having a bunch of people try a bunch of different stuff so that we could all learn from each other, And I think that's how it's played out, and that's, I think, for the best.
Amazing. And I guess, so then you and Janine at that moment decided that, okay, you guys want to work together.
Yeah.
And you put a proposal together, and that was the beginning of Edge?
That was the beginning of Edge, yeah. We were like, okay, we like working together. We see eye to eye on the vision for what we actually want. We had maybe even a slightly different perspective. Like, we wanted it to be much more family friendly, kid friendly. We wanted to focus on health and like making the environments very healthy for people as like a core concept. We wanted to focus on things outside of just crypto. That was very important to us. And yeah, and then also there's kind of like a vibe thing that's hard to put into words, but there was alignment there. So yeah, that's how that happened.
And what was what was the initial idea, and what was the concept that you were starting with at Edge? I guess, like, were you just like, okay, we're going to run what was the first version of Edge? What was your rallying cry in the beginning?
Right. Okay, so we had some ideas. We had so many like brainstorming sessions and etc. But we knew a couple of things. One was that there's something very potent here, something very powerful in this new format of gathering. So the whole idea for Zuzalu, by the way, I don't know how many people know this, but it's a lot of like, one of the core initial theses was that there are a lot of events in the world where thousands of people gather for a couple of days, like festivals and conferences. There are lots of events in the world where a couple dozen people gather for a couple months, like residencies or hacker houses.
Yep.
But there's very little, like, what happens if you push in both directions, temporally and size of group wise, and you have a few hundred people live together for a month or two. That's just not common at all, right? And so that was Vitalik's whole thing of like, let's just try it and see what happens. And we, after doing it a few times, we're like, okay, there's something there. There's something novel at that intersection where there's emergent behavior that happens when you gather that number of people for that amount of time. There's new ideas, new startup, concepts, new ways of being. You can actually run an experiment, like something more involved than just, I don't know. We can talk about some of the examples, but like something more involved than just having a booth at a conference or something, or like having a talk at a conference. So that was kind of the guiding light of like, okay, we know there's something there, so we want to do more of that. And then the principles I talked about, family friendly, like multi-generational, multi-disciplinary, default healthy, and focusing on building, co-creating. And then we're like, okay, well, what do we do, right? We're not biology. We don't have insane distribution and like marketing channels. But we do have the legitimacy of having executed well, and people know about that, and they have told their friends about it. So what we decided to do, the first ever Edge City event, was Edge City Denver. It was during ETH Denver, which is a big Ethereum conference. And we had a week, we had the most stunning venue, and we had a week, and every day of that week, we had a different partner that we partnered with. So like big blockchains, community organizations, etc. And over that week, we had, I think, 4,000 people, 4,000 people come through the doors because it was this kind of like fun new thing. And people had heard about Zuzalu and wanted to check it out, and etc. And that really gave us, that kind of bootstrapped us into being able to execute. Because we had a community now and we could spread our ideas and stuff.
And then, okay, so amazing start. And then did you very clearly know what you wanted to do next and where you wanted to take that sort of like community? Like, it's like, what's Edge right now? When we look at that right now, what's happening today? What matters to you? Yeah, what does it look like?
Yeah, so right now we essentially are, we organize pop-up cities around the world. They're generally 500 to 1,000 people, live together for a month. We've had over 11,000 people come to our events. We've had, dozens of startups and projects. There's like things being incubated, tons of kids. So I'm just riffing on my talk yesterday now. It's because it's top of mind. But yeah, so that's what we're doing right now. And over time, the vision, the idea is to build this global network of hubs around the world. Many are starting temporary because we're trying out different places, but they're becoming permanent. And that's already happening in California and Bhutan. And then we're, and the idea is just to kind of build like a global innovation network. We call it a network city instead of a network state because we're less focused on the state-like elements of this, of like, being recognized by other states, etc. But a network city, so you have different neighborhoods around the world. You can travel freely between them. Has a certain vibe and culture and community and people that you know, etc. So that's what we're doing now. How do we get from Denver to now? The next step was an event that we did called Edge Esmeralda in California. The way that happened was basically after doing Denver, we were connected to someone called Devin Zugel through Vitalik, and they've been friends for a while. And Devin is building a new town in California called Esmeralda. And when we started talking to her, we realized like, oh, right, these pop-ups that we're doing are such a natural partner for long-term physical projects, like new towns, new cities, big real estate, because we can bring them ideas and people and investment and software that is incubated there, etc. And in return, we can partner with them, potentially even share economics eventually. But maybe even more importantly, they can give longevity to the things that get incubated at Edge, right? So someone can come to Edge, build a new startup, and they know that if it's a startup focused on, it could be like a new HOA system or something involving new, like the way people interact in urban environments or whatever, they can just have it there from day one, right? It's like the first best customer. So yeah, it was a very natural partnership. We somehow convinced Devin to trust us enough to actually do this. We did it in June of that year. So there's about 6 months gap. 5 months gap between Denver and that. And we had over 1,000 people, a bunch of kids, Uniswap, Ethereum, all these big partners. And importantly, it was like 25% crypto people. The rest was like AI people, robotics, bio, science, culture, art, music, etc. People that had never heard of Zuzalu, never touched a crypto thing in their lives. And they came and they were just like, what is this? This is so cool. I've been living in SF for a decade and I haven't felt this vibrant energy in so long, And we specifically, last thing I'll say on that, we wanted to do this near the Bay because there are so many brilliant people there. It's probably the highest density of talent right now in the world, I would say, still. But they're not going to just travel to Montenegro based on a website, right? They actually have to or wherever else in the world we want to go next, they have to come and experience it. So we had to bring the circus to them and have them come. And, we were getting board members of Anthropic, execs from OpenAI, all these people coming, the Collison brothers, coming, being like, okay, this is actually kind of cool. This whole thing we'd heard about from Vitalik or whatever, there's something real there, right? Their kids are having a good time. They're enjoying it themselves. So then it's much easier for us to be like, hey, we're going to Thailand next, you should come.
Yep. No, I agree. You're just making me think that I should actually do one of these with Balaji or Donovan's kids. I think I should just get Kiki on stage. They were like the fucking best interview. I'll ask Donovan and see if we can get away.
Sure, you are 100%
a legend. It was great to see him at the conference yesterday as well. That would be such a good series. Or
just kids of NS, whoever's down.
It's just got to be cautious about putting them on the line, but that would be so good. No, okay, amazing. And actually, Esmeralda that you mentioned, right? Denver to Esmeralda, and Esmeralda, you've been amazingly useful for Esmeralda, right? You would put it on the map with a very useful group of people. Denver was obviously incredible, right? But you've helped out a lot there, and it's accelerated Esmeralda, the kind of the real estate project itself, right? So do you want to talk a little about how you've helped Esmeralda?
Yeah, I mean, it's been in both directions,
Sure.
right? Like we were kind of a nothing entity still outside of crypto, at least back then. And Devin is extremely well known and very well networked in the Bay, and just like a very well known blogger. So she helped us again, like we put each other on the map, I guess, in both ways. I think we've also helped her see that the software layer. So what I mean by that is, like, if you think about a new city or like NS or Forest City or something like that as the hardware layer, right, on top of which the community gets built, the cultures, the norms, etc. So we are really good at the software layer, and then people like Devin, this place, etc., are the hardware layer, right? We hope to see that the software layer is critical, not just eventually, not once you build the city and people can move in, but from the beginning. Because people actually want to be involved. They want to feel like they're part of a story from day one, etc. And I think that's something that she's really come to realize and really come to value enough to now, we're actually partnering on the event, on the new town. So I think that, if anything, has been kind of our contribution to the space more broadly. I think it's now abundantly clear to everyone in the space that you don't just go from like cloud community that buys land together. You need to have that, like, let's gather first. Let's come to Arc. Let's come to, Infinita. Let's come to Edge and actually spend time together.
Yep.
This is what I care about most. I think the social aspect, the community building aspect, is actually critical.
Yep.
In the talk you just had before this, you were talking kind of near the end about how pop-ups have gone from this thing that a lot of people felt like were kind of funny and gimmicky, and it's like, okay, the hippies are hanging out again. It's like, no, I genuinely think pop-up cities are a critical layer to bootstrap the affinity and kinship you need to actually make one of these things succeed. Because otherwise you get people that move somewhere because of like tax reasons or whatever, but they don't feel like a deep connection to the place. So when things get hard or when issues arise in the community, you don't have that like buy-in, like emotional lock-in of like, let's figure this out, let's work together, let's do this, You just get exit, or people just don't even care enough to move there in the first place. So I think that's hopefully what's starting to happen more, and that's what, in our relationship with Esmeralda, we've been able to provide as well.
Yeah. Because again, you did it last year, you've done it again this year. You'll be going back to Esmeralda next year and just continuing to support?
I think so, yeah. Almost certainly, because there it's like, it's just so obvious. Like, we can keep providing value. It's, again, we keep getting more and more interesting people from the Bay coming. They're more and more aware of what's happening. They're more willing now. Like, we have a pop-up in Patagonia in Argentina in a couple of weeks. And now we're getting a bunch of people that came to Esmeralda last year or this past summer being like, all right, yeah, you guys are legit. We'll come. We'll fly 12 hours and bring our kids and whatever. So that's cool. You need to kind of build the track record, I think, before some people come.
So you're recurring in some of these locations, right? Because you've been running, it's not just Denver and Esmeralda right now. You've run stuff in a whole bunch of other places. Like what other places? Like Austin, Bhutan.
Bhutan, Montenegro. Oh yeah, Montenegro is the first. Thailand,
Yeah,
Chiang Mai.
yeah.
We did Cape Town earlier this year.
Yes.
So Cape Town is a good example of us doing like um, kind of like an exploration or an expedition where we bring a smaller subset of the community just for like 10 days. And we see, like, we're going to scout a place anyway. We might as well bring some of the community with us so that we see how they react to everything,
Yeah.
you know?
Great point.
And that's been really cool, actually. That's been really good because we see, like in Cape Town, for example, it was actually harder. This is kind of a learning behind the scenes. It was harder for us to convince people to go there than we thought.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was a time of year. Maybe it was we always do things, without enough time ahead of time.
Sure.
But it's far to fly for a lot of people, etc.
Yep.
But the cool thing was that then instead we ended up getting a lot of people from around Africa. So we had folks from Lesotho, from Ghana, from Kenya coming, and that was always the goal of like, okay, let's do something somewhere where it's like much easier for those folks to come.
Yep.
And continue to build the global network that way. But yeah, so they were like, okay, we learned a lot. It's an incredible, beautiful place. It's going to be hard for us to get 500 people to fly there from the US, So that's a good learning.
Yeah.
Unless there's like something really specific and cool. And there is a new town project there as well that we're now quite close to, very interested in partnering with. It's called The Bridge. It's very cool.
This is an interesting part, but it is actually very difficult to get people to go somewhere for an extended period of time, particularly if you're trying to get people to go that have something going on in their life, right? Like, because maybe they have a job, maybe they have some children, like you can't just get up and go to the other side of the world for a month, right? Like it's actually like extremely difficult to build something that's worthwhile for people to do that, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, it's really hard. It's really hard. I mean, it's becoming easier. There are some macro tailwinds in our favor of like people are much more mobile. People understand that it's possible to take a month out of their year and they're still productive. They're still working. They're probably much more productive and feel much better when they're there. But yeah, it's becoming much more well-known. The tide is lifting all our ships because people that come to Edge are like, oh, cool, that was great, but what's ARC up to? I'll spend a month in Malaysia.
Yeah. The circus you've taken to Esmeralda is like, again, onboarding all of these people that go to these other places, right?
Totally. I mean, there's like a cadre of people now who just hop from one to the other.
Sure.
And they was like, okay, what's next? And we're like, well, we're not doing something for 6 months, but these guys are here, or, you could go to Prosper or something.
Yeah. But Patagonia is next, and it sounds super interesting because it feels like you're acting a little bit more like a layer one and supporting lots of different sub-communities. So do you want to talk a little bit about the plan for Patagonia?
Yeah, so we're kind of like a layer 1.5 where we picked just the most stunning town. My co-founder on our team scouted it. It's in the mountains. It's in Patagonia in the Andes. It's surrounded by, mountains. There's a lake. It's just beautiful. It's an off-season ski town, so there's a ton of accommodation and it's lots of restaurants and all that stuff, and it's quite affordable compared to if you were to try to go there in the actual summer or in the winter. And what that allows us to do is it allows us to get a bunch of essentially community homes or hotels that different communities will own and like own the programming for, own the vibe for, etc. So we have 16 different residencies. We call them residencies, ranging from, obviously there's a lot of like crypto and AI. There's one called Oz where Ollie who's around, she presented yesterday as well. She's bringing like 50 people as one of the sub-communities. But there's also non-tech stuff. There's a meditation residency. There's an artist residency. There's a video creator residency. There's a consciousness and psychedelics residency. There's one we're doing with Plumia, which is kind of the think tank arm of Safety Wing, the travel insurance arm. So lots of like visa and immigration, policy, conversations, and all of this stuff is relevant. All of it's very interesting, and I think it's going to be really cool for people to be able to have programming from all of these different groups. And then there's the usual suspects. There's Ethereum Foundation and all that stuff, and they're bringing a bunch of people. So yeah, that's how it's going to be structured.
Okay. And then if we're looking forward then a few years, like what are you trying to achieve, do you think? Like where's Edge going to be? What are you going to be doing? What are you optimistic for?
Yeah. So I think ultimately this becomes like I said, like a network city. It's a network of hubs around the world, some temporary, more permanent over time. There will be people living in those hubs, building new projects and startups and writing academic papers and creating art. They will feel like part of a cohesive unit. They will have benefits from being part of that community. Like it's going to be much easier to travel around because we'll have visa agreements with many governments. They will have the culture and the vibe that they like. And yeah, and I imagine this will be in the order of like, high tens of thousands, low hundreds of thousands of people that will be part of the broader network. And I think over time, it's going to be interesting how these things all overlap, So we will probably have hubs, it's very reasonable we'll have a hub here in the network school. It's reasonable we'll have a hub in Bali or around the world, in Patagonia, Thailand, the places we've been. And those points of connection will be how we intersect also with ARC and with NS and all the other communities. And I think the communities will eventually, the network states will all be interdependent, connected through the people that we share in common, right? And the cultures and the ideas that we have. We'll have very different perspectives on how we go about this, which I think is very good. It's very healthy. But some people will be connection nodes between them, and we'll maybe do shared events together, etc. So yeah, I'm very excited about that.
That's super cool. And do you have an idea of like, again, that network of 100,000 people living across these nodes, like what it will be that they have in common that unifies them, particularly with Edge? Did you have an idea of what that looks like?
Yeah. So that thing, that culture or that like vibe that's different for us is something that we're approaching with like a emergent lens, like an emergent philosophy. We're not trying to mandate that out of the gate. That said, we have mandated the early versions of it. So we say this publicly. We look for people who are curious, kind, and high agency. Curious, they're always learning, they're interested and interesting. Kind, meaning no assholes. And that doesn't mean being nice all the time. You can be critical and do it in a kind way, So there's like a certain level of thoughtfulness in the people that we attract. And then high agency, doing something interesting in the world, building something. It doesn't have to be tech. It could be art, music, academics, etc. But kind of live players who are active and they're out there and they're kind of, doing something cool. So that's like the baseline of what we attract. And that self-selects often. People either read that and they're like, nah, I don't want that, or they read that and they're like, cool, that's exactly who I want to be around. And then you get to the slightly higher order things of like, okay, do people like being outside? Do they even want to be part of a multi-generational community? If you hate children, don't come to Edge. There are kids around, that kind of thing. So I think over time, those cultures will form. I think one difference between us and some of the projects I see in the space is that although we see lots of problems that we want to fix in the world, we don't necessarily define ourselves in antagonism to an existing structure. We're not like, okay, the US is collapsing, so everyone let's move over here. We're much more interested in like painting a more optimistic vision of the world that attracts people. And I think that's just going to be a slightly different, it's all going to net out eventually in like a slightly different configuration vibe, in the community.
Maybe that last point is sort of like then answering this next question, which is like, I guess, like, why do you see this as your mission? And I guess like, why do you see this as the thing that's worth your time to work on?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I First of all, I love it. It continues to be meaningful and a source of inspiration and ideas. And I just love being around brilliant people like this. And every time I sit down for a meal here and get to talk to someone about the crazy random thing that they're interested in, it's very like, it gives me life energy, right? And so I don't foresee that changing anytime soon. So I want to keep that going. I think this is like life work for me. And I feel very grateful to have found that, because it just continues to be, you know, like Paul Graham has this amazing line, like curiosity is both the engine and the rudder. So it both like gives you the force to keep moving and it directs you where to go. And so for me, that's always just been true. And I find that most active when I'm in any spaces. And then ultimately I'm just like continue to be interested in the potential societal and like sociological impacts of all of this. Like I do think there's something important happening here that we should be paying attention to, and keep like, you know, pushing forward.
That's super cool. I love it. Well, so look, Patagonia starts when?
October 18th.
October 18th.
November 15th, yeah.
And then do you have a next one after Patagonia yet?
We'll probably be back, well, we'll be back in California next summer,
Yep.
probably in June. We're considering doing 1 or 2 more like scouting trips in between.
Yep.
But yeah, you know, follow along at Join Edge City on Twitter. I'm at Timour XYZ. And yeah, and sign up to the newsletter. You'll get emails first.
Yeah.
You'll hear what we're up to first.
Yeah, it's great. They're good emails and there's always so much of that. Loads. It is what's going on. Yeah. But anyway, pleasure, Timour. Thank you so much for going. Thank you. Really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Pleasure.
16 of my ancestors on the Mayflower, President number 2 and 6, is our grandfathers of mine. You can feel good about the top-down mission of like fixing governance and trying to innovate and dealing with what we've seen as being so broken in the West. Sure. And then you have the bottom-up mission of basically lifting millions of people out of poverty. And in 2020, I had come off of like a wave of exits and changes in my life, and I decided I want to work on something new. I don't want to rely on the idea that taxation is the right revenue model for government, but I think we should be able to innovate on that. I made a short list of biggest problems facing humanity and decided that number 1 is our rubbish governments, is China. They literally had to copy the US model in order to become what they are today.